Ameríndios is a designation given to the ancient people who inhabited the American continent before the arrival of the Europeans. They had in common a braiding technique used for various activities, from agricultural to religious purposes. Keep watching this episode to learn more about these groups and the fascinating braiding technique that endures to this day. A research conducted by the Federal University of Minas Gerais proposes that Amerindian people arrived in the Americas through Asia, in particular by the Bering Strait, where there was a firm strip of ground there. The Amerindians inhabit numerous territories that include South America, Central America, and North America. In North America, they are distributed in territories that are currently recognized as the United States, Canada, and Mexico. In the Northwest Coast, communities that had the main fishing activity were present. In Yukon and Mackenzie, they lived in these cold lands, Atascocins, hunters, and they were less developed than the coastal ones. The main means of survival was the hunt for the caribou. In Southwest, the first agricultural revolution was produced, which would give the rise to the main crops of the continent. They started the cultivation of corn there. When you think about pyramids, odds are good you think about Egypt, mummies, and camels, right? While the pyramids in Egypt might be the most famous, there are actually more pyramids in Central America than in Egypt. That's because a great number of Mesoamerican people, meaning the natives of Central America, built huge pyramids for their leaders and their gods. Since we know about the Aztec language and the customs very well, we know a lot about their pyramids too. Some of them are still standing, and the next time you and your family go to a trip on Mexico, you can visit them and even climb on them. The Aztecs built some of the largest and most important pyramids, but they weren't the first in the Central America. The first pyramids in this region were built around 3,000 years ago by an older civilization called the Olmecs. The Aztecs came much later, only about 600 years ago. But once they began to build, they built big. The Aztecs settled in central Mexico, the region that today is the capital of Mexico City. They built their cities around the central pyramid that had a temple, meaning that it was a religion center where the priests would communicate with their gods. These temples were one of the most important part of the Aztec community, and because it meant the center for the religious ritual of the human sacrifice. Today's religions generally only demand that you give up a day of the week for your faith, but the Aztecs wanted to do much more than to keep their gods happy. They would sacrifice people, often prisoners, captured in wars, at the top of their pyramids. This bloody ritual has become one of the most famous parts of the Aztec history. The Olmecs used two calendars together. One calendar was a secular one that had 365 days. The second calendar was a religious one that represented a 260-day ritual cycle. The Olmecs, they developed these calendars, and we could see how intellectually advanced their civilization was, and how also important religion was to them. They worshipped a variety of different gods, and their temples were large and impressive structures. Many archaeologists believe that Machu Picchu was constructed as a royal estate of sorts. The presence of elite residences in the northeast of the territory confirmed that. It would have been used by the emperor and his family as a temporary respite, the site supporting a small number of year-round caretakers. Other examples of the Inca royal estates are known in Peru. A staircase running beside the royal compound leads to a plaza below, and the emperor was afforded a garden, a private bath, and even a private toilet area, the only private one on the site. Although Machu Picchu has a wall, modest gateway, and dry moat that was likely used for collecting rainwater, it doesn't appear to have been set up with a military purpose in mind, and there is no evidence that a battle of any sort was fought there. With the sedentarization of people of South America, more complex activities were developed, such as ceramics. Another characteristic was the anthropophagus rituals, which are assimilated to cannibalism. However, they had religious meanings. The people carried out these actions when they had a victory against their enemies, so they could absorb their characteristics of honor and courage. Something in common among the entire Amerindian community are the interweaves, or most commonly known as breeding. It is something fundamental in basic food transportation and processing activities. In addition to occupying a prominent position in their ontologies, they also express and broke aesthetics, precepts, and worldviews. Breeding offers excellent opportunities for studies on the multiple relationships between humans and the material world, although they are little addressed in the archaeological and ethno-archaeological works. But firstly, what are interweaves? Basketry and braiding are very used by the entire Amerindian community, explaining everything from hunting interests to rituals. It is known that by these techniques, Amerindians weave transport and storage baskets, boxes, boats, belts, shackles, straps, supports for carrying weight on the head, rest for containers, festive costumes, toys, and etc. were made by interweaving. The technology of the braiding is perhaps one of the oldest in mankind, and this braiding, among other perishable technologies, are seen as crucial to the initial settlement itself. In the Americas, the technology of braiding is as old as the technology present before. Yet, unlike this and the ceramics that are no longer being produced, for example, interweaving follows the life history of Amerindians. The versatility of interweaves is exemplified in the use of sieves as a cover to thread baskets during the constant displacement of people. Several factors were involved in the production of braids, such as the selection of the materials and the intended uses, the teaching and learning relationship, the individual trajectories of those who produce, and how it influenced the development of individual and community styles. The technology of braiding should be considered the manufacturing process, not only the result. In spirituality, interweaves also represent a state of balance between nature and culture, corresponding to a particularly sensitive object. Many cultural legends were involved with braiding, explaining to others why their immense importance. Among them, the explanation of the tribe Chiriyo, in which humans were created from a braided that then had a soul added. Therefore, his drawings are similar to those of human bodies, in addition to other versions in which the characters lock themselves in ounces and go hunting. These are mixed up with other technologies like hunting. Knowledge about braiding can make it possible to live with other people who can teach us to see beyond the appearance of things. In conclusion, despite the different localities, languages, and cultures, the history of the Amerindian people is intertwined in straw braids. Much more than a technique for stacking of baskets, traps, and boats, the braided had a metaphysical value and was involved in rituals and legends, representing the balance between nature and culture. With a new look at the Amerindian baskets, a material and immaterial heritage, we set out for the next episode of the Hindu and their religions, in which we will deepen in the ancient people of India, their caste system, and also their religion. Keep watching to see the next episode.